Violence in the Aboriginal community in Australia has become a problem. Well, it continues to be a problem, to be more accurate. The government, in their infinite wisdom, always wants to show they're helping by splashing taxpayer money around, and certainly this case is no different. The ABC reported this week on the first national plan to address violence against Indigenous women and children. Strangely, they don't include violence against Aboriginal men, which, as I'll show you soon, is also a major problem. And how much does this latest exercise in bureaucracy cost? Exceedingly expensive. $220 million. But don't worry, it was co-designed with Indigenous people. Phew, that's a relief. Remember, this is just a plan. All these websites and frameworks don't just make themselves. Here's the new website if you're interested. Our Ways, Strong Ways, Our Voices. I thought we'd better have a quick look, even if it's just at the artwork. After all, hundreds of millions of your taxpayer dollars have been spent on it. Curiously, they also have a donate button, just in case you think the government funding isn't enough. To be fair, according to the ABC, the real figure is $218.3 million in new funding over 4 years. The fact they said new funding makes me think there was some old funding. Yep, according to the official press release by Minister for Indigenous Australians Malarndirri McCarthy, who of course highlighted that $218 million, she also wrote, "This new funding is in addition to the record $262.5 million we've already invested in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Action Plan 2023 to 2025. Not to mention our significant investment of $367 million to more than double funding for family violence prevention legal services." I'm not the nation's treasurer, but adding all those figures up comes to almost $850 million in taxpayer money spent on preventing violence against Aboriginal women and children. The ABC interviewed Muriel Bamblett, a Yorta Jawarong, Tongarong and Boonwurrung elder and CEO of the Victorian Aboriginal Child and Community Agency, who co-chaired the committee for this new plan. Without using any sexist language, she said, "We shouldn't have to respond to a death of a woman at the hands of a male every time to be able to get resources. Sorry, mate, you don't get any money because you're a male, and by default, that makes you solely the perpetrator, not the victim." But has all this funding worked? Well, let's take a look at the figures. This is the latest homicide data published in March last year. Homicide in Australia, 2023 to 24. Just to get a baseline, we'll take a look at Table 38, non-Indigenous homicide offenders. As you can see, non-Indigenous males commit homicide at a rate of 1.75 per 100,000. That sounds relatively low. Non-Indigenous females have a homicide rate of 0.20, very low, I would suggest. Now let's take a look at Table 34, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander homicide offenders. As you can see, the rates are significantly higher. I'll just paste in the non-Indigenous data for comparison. Indigenous males have a homicide rate of 10.80, which is more than 6 times that of non-Indigenous males. Indigenous females have a rate of 2.99, which is almost 15 times that of non-Indigenous females. Okay, so all this shows is that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are more likely to commit homicide than their non-Indigenous counterparts. But what about victims, though? Table 22, non-Indigenous homicide victims by sex, shows that males are likely to be victims at a rate of 1.13 compared to 0.63 for women. Now let's look at Table 17, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander homicide victims by sex. As you can see, at a rate of 5.86, Aboriginal males are more than 5 times more likely to be victims of homicide than their non-Indigenous counterparts. Similarly, Aboriginal females have a homicide victimisation rate of 2.75, which is more than 4 times that of non-Indigenous females. So what does all this show? Basically, Aboriginal people are much more likely to kill people, but also much more likely to be victims of being killed. The only sensible conclusion, the one the government seems desperate to ignore, is that Aboriginal people are killing each other at an alarming rate. Table 21 is interesting. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander homicide victims by relationship. The most common form of homicide in the Aboriginal community is male victim, male offender at 25 deaths, 17 of which knew the offender. That means the most common form of violence resulting in death was a male perpetrator against a male acquaintance or relative. The next most likely was female victim, male offender at 11 deaths, 9 of which were intimate partners. This is where all those hundreds of millions of dollars are going. We can also see that 3 males were actually killed by a female offender, all of whom were known to them. Meanwhile, 3 females died at the hands of other females. Table 20 shows us that of all those victims, only 2 were children, which doesn't necessarily mean they were underage, just that they were children of the people that killed them. In fact, according to Table 18, only 5 Indigenous homicide victims in total were under the age of 18, all of whom were boys. So what does all this say? Well, I think it clearly shows that it's not just Aboriginal females being murdered. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Most Aboriginal people being murdered are males. It's just that of the females being murdered, most are being murdered by their loved ones, and I use that term very loosely. But as I said, the government, in their infinite wisdom, has chosen to push all its funding into that small demographic. Of course, this data doesn't show who was assaulted but survived. According to the latest reporting from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, nearly 3 in 4 hospitalisations of First Nations people due to assault were for injuries caused by family violence. So yes, violence in the Australian Aboriginal community is real, but this government has chosen to focus its millions on female and child victims of domestic violence only, when the reality shows us that most victims, at least the ones dying, are males. Perhaps the government needs to put more funding into preventing Indigenous male deaths at the hands of other Indigenous males, or even better, preventing all deaths regardless of sex or ethnicity. But some of you might be saying, $850 million isn't so much in the grand scheme of things if we can prevent a little bit of violence against Aboriginal people. Well, look at this article by the ABC from yesterday. PM condemns white supremacy ideology behind alleged Invasion Day terror attack. Yes, somehow they try to make out that it's white people doing all the violence, when we just clearly saw from the official data that Aboriginal people are much more likely to be perpetrators and victims of their own violence. Despite the white terrorism clickbait, the article is actually more about the national agreement on closing the gap. We see you, we stand with you, the PM told First Nations people as he handed down his annual Closing the Gap report in Parliament. Mr Albanese told Parliament he is not contemplating failure on closing the gap, despite the deadline being just 5 years away. The article notes that the most recent data shows just 4 out of 19 targets are on track to be met by 2031. The endless funding has not been working, but never fear, more funding is here. New commitments announced by the Prime Minister include $299 million to double the number of jobs in remote communities, $144 million to upgrade and repair community-controlled health clinics, $27 million to subsidise for essential grocery items, $32 million towards food storage, $44 million towards birthing on country, $48 million for short-term hostel accommodation, and $450 million for Indigenous health. So, as you can see, there's hundreds of millions of dollars for everyone, as long as you're Aboriginal and as long as you didn't make the mistake of being born male.